Hi, I'm Matt Van Vleet, and today we're talking about the LeadingAgile Studio and the offers and problems we solve. I'm here today with Kevin Smith and Daryl Kulak.
Great to be here.
Hey, Matt, nice to be here.
So I want to do a real quick intro, and then we're going to explain these offers by telling stories of problems that we've solved for clients. So first of all, when you're looking at Agile and you're looking at different solutions, you have to always start with the why. Why am I doing this? Many times clients are coming to us because they want to improve time to market, they want to improve quality, they want to solve new innovative problems. So we talk about the why a lot around these Agile goals that our clients have. And in solving those goals, many times what's needed is a transformation where we need to work with you and your organization to change the way you align to your customers and markets so that you have products that are aligned appropriately. And we help you change how the flow of work flows through your organization to get that work to teams so that those teams are in alignment with those products. Often when you're wanting to do that doesn't solve all of your problems. There's things that you need to solve in an accelerated fashion to get there faster than the organization can iteratively and incrementally grow. And we have a set of studios offers that are designed to help you when you need to get things done faster or there's additional things you need to do as part of that transformation. These offers really fit into 5 categories. We have people uplift, velocity uplift, product uplift, code uplift, and environment uplift. Each of these offers are trying to accelerate and help your organization solve some area of capability and get better at writing software. So now what we're going to do is talk through various types of projects that we're involved with where we're taking one of these capabilities and offering it to solve a specific problem for a client. First, Daryl, why don't you talk about a Fortune 20 company where they were wanting us to come in and help them set the direction as they needed to move from being a manufacturer to more of a digital native, where a large part of their product was moving from hardware to software.
Right. Yeah, we worked with this, this very large company. It's been around more than 100 years, manufacturer, and it started with a very interesting question, which was, how does our technology capability compare to the digital natives at the top of the field? And so in order to understand the answer to that question, how do we compare, we needed to run through an assessment of the existing teams and the existing work that was getting done and look inside the code base. And so this is what we call technology assessment. And we have tools to get this done. We have tools that can look inside the code base and say, is this easy to maintain? Is this well structured? Is this going to promote agility by the way that the code is structured and the way the repositories are structured, the way the environment is set up, onboarding of new developers, all those things. We can kind of assess all of those capabilities in IT and then say, is this going to support you being just as good as those digital natives, or are there areas where you need to focus in order to have that kind of parallel capability?
Right. And it's not just the code. I know we had to look at things like, how do we attract the right people? How do we retain those people? How do we, how do we align and allow people freedom to innovate and talk to customers? So it's a pretty comprehensive type assessment to truly understand what's it going to take for an organization to become, really have technology go from a cost center to a true competitive advantage.
Right. And like you said, Matt, so that's not just the code. It's not just software development practices, but how clued in, how connected is the design group, how good is your product management. So you could have a very great engineering group, but if they're building the wrong product for the market, then your product management capability needs to be even stronger. So there's lots of aspects, and we include all of those in that technology assessment.
So Kevin, why don't you talk a little bit about the tool we use? Daryl alluded to the fact that we have some tools and scripts that can go look at your code. What's the purpose of that?
Yeah, this was a interesting assessment in the fact that it was to advise the CEO and the board, yet it went all the way down to doing code analysis. And we ended up taking a bunch of different open source projects and building our own analytics to answer specific questions. One of the difficulties with code analysis tools is the amount of information they give you. They don't really answer any specific question. They spew out data. And in what we were attempting to do, we set out specific goals that the company was trying to achieve. We identified, what questions we would ask to see if they were achieving those goals, and then looked at what metrics we can look at to try and answer those questions. And part of that went all the way down to static code analysis and looking at code complexity and how difficult or easy things were to change or maintain or to test. How easy it is to get environments up and running for developers, for development, for simulating production. So it was an interesting technology assessment, just in the breadth and depth that it went to advise the CEO.
So that goal, question, metric structure that we use in the assessment is important, because the goals go back to what are you really trying to accomplish as you gain agility. Are you trying to reduce defects, or trying to have better quality, trying to improve your speed? So when we know what those goals are for getting better as an IT organization, now we can know what questions to ask. And then sometimes with the metrics, the customer will come back and say, we don't have metrics for that, in which case we need to have some ability to collect that information. But in the cases where the metrics are there, we're able to conduct the assessment. And if they're not there, we figure out another way to get that.
Yeah. So let's so this organization, right, was they've been in business over 100 years. They have a lot of technology in place, and then they're trying to move to where technology is more their product. Let's transition to another project we worked on where the client was really experts in process and manufacturing and had very little technology experience. So there weren't a lot of applications and teams already in place. They were actually looking for us to actually provide that execution for that innovation project. Kevin, do you want to talk a little bit about that project?
Yeah, this was building a digital twin. It's an innovation project, but the company we were helping knew the business, they knew the industry, they had the data analytics. They just didn't have any software engineering capacity to actually build the product around all of the analytics that they were putting together. So we were able to bring in a full team and cover development team, velocity, environment, Uplift, building something in the cloud that matched the way they already operated. And in addition to software engineering, we were able to do some product uplift as well with experience architecture. So supporting, end to end, talking to the users of the software, figuring out what their needs were, how to incorporate that into what we were building and doing that in an iterative way. So we, doing true Agile fashion, having releases every couple weeks, talking to the customers and doing demos every week, and not just talking to them, but actually taking their feedback and adjusting where we were going from a development perspective. We had set out a roadmap at the beginning, but then after building for a couple weeks, getting feedback, we ended up switching directions a few times just to incorporate and make this as valuable as possible for the end users of the product.
We often go into clients that have a large technology experience and they're looking to do something differently, and then at times we go into clients that it's really new. So how do you deal with that? And how do why would studios kind of encounter such a variety of efforts?
Yeah, sometimes the customer's question is in the context of we want to transform to be a different type of technology organization, like in the first example we gave. In this example, that was not the question at all. The question was, we do not have the capacity to do this innovation project. We need your help, but it's not really a coaching situation or organizational change situation. It's just putting this application in and having the skills to run it with test driving our code, with doing continuous integration on a very fast time scale. This was just in a few months that this digital twin came together. And so the question can be in the context of a transformation or out of the context of that, like in this situation.
All right, let's talk about another project. For a large e-commerce platform that had multiple teams, probably 10 to 20 teams working on this e-commerce platform, and they were at the point where they spent more time orchestrating even to get simple things done, and had a very hard time getting releases out the door. So we went in and we not only provided velocity uplift, where we started help working on a team, but we provided product extraction, which is one of the code uplift offers. Daryl, can you explain what product extraction is?
Sure. So product extraction is when we look at the velocity of a team, usually in the context of an agile transformation. We look at the velocity of a team or set of teams, and we say there's something that's holding these teams back that's not addressed by organizational change, that's not addressed by kind of team room practices, by sprints and product owners. They're still kind of slow. And so in those cases, sometimes it's the actual legacy code that's holding those teams back. So the product extraction service that we offer is us taking that legacy application from the customer so that they're continuing to produce velocity at the same rate. We pull the application into Studios, and then we change the structure of it, maybe change the architecture, maybe change the componentization of how the application's put together, and flip it so that it is more aligned with what that team needs to deliver. And the goal of product extraction is always to reduce the dependencies that team has to deal with. So in this case, I think the team had dependencies on like another 20 or 30 other Scrum teams within this organization that they had to talk to and test and figure things out with, sometimes wait on for the other team to finish their development. And so then the team themselves, they might finish their sprint in 2 weeks, but then it takes maybe another 2 months for all these dependencies to come through. Big project management effort. So with product extract, we think about how can we restructure the code to reduce those dependencies that the teams have on one another. Yeah, we can restructure the teams, and sometimes that can help a lot. but then we also have to restructure the legacy code. That's what product extraction is about.
Awesome. So Kevin, what are the technical practices that we use as part of that? And how is product extraction different than just the way we would advise people write software in the first place?
Yeah, I was going to add that on the technical side, we talk about reducing dependencies on other teams. We do try to reduce technical dependencies as well, but it's more about isolating those dependencies and being able to test them in isolation from actually running the product. So we're looking for where we're dependent on external services and faking or mocking those out, creating test doubles, so that we can build the functionality, or the team can build the functionality completely independent of the other services and the other systems that are running. And if we're doing this from scratch, you're always going to have dependencies on something external to yourself, whether it's database or different services that you're calling to get the information you need to present or manipulate. But doing so in such a way that your team isn't sitting waiting for an environment or waiting for another team or waiting for a requirement to be finished. You can actually, through contract testing and other mechanisms, you can fully develop a set of features, test them, and move them quickly into production.
So product extraction really it puts a process and a framework around a lot of the best practices and other good practices that have been developed over the years, so that now if you have 10 teams that all have legacy code, they can be looking at them, go through a process of understanding their dependencies based on, what are the types of those dependencies, based on the type, what are the right tools to apply to those dependencies, and then be able to prioritize and value which ones are the most important to extract and do it. And kind of going back to the earlier conversation, we're doing this not because the code needs to look better. We're doing this because we need to reduce the cost of building a new feature. We need to improve the ROI from those features. We need to improve our time to market. And in order to do those things, teams being hampered by not having the ability to move quickly are things that really, kind of provide an anchor on the output of your organization. So many times we will go in and work with legacy code bases in order to help make it so that the organization can move faster and improve quality at the same time.
There was another interesting thing with that project is that when our developers got started with their team, we did some onboarding with the customer, and it took, I think, a little bit more than a week for each developer to get onboarded. And so we asked them, "Do you want us to help address that issue?" And they said yes. And so now onboarding is down to a matter of a few hours. Push button developer onboarding. And that's how it should be in every company. So that's part of the environment uplift that you mentioned earlier, Matt, that we do sometimes as its own service and then sometimes in the context of doing product extraction or something else.
Yeah, I think it was more like 2 to 3 weeks down to a couple hours. And it really indicates some of the things that we're talking about too, right? Because why does it take 2 to 3 weeks for a developer to get set up? Well, it's because of all of the dependencies and all of the pieces that you have to install in their local environment just for them to start writing code. So if you can isolate those and remove those and automate those, you should be able to get a development environment set up in a few hours at most, ideally a few minutes. But
Yeah. And it's interesting. So we've talked about this one project from a code uplift perspective around around improving the code and the dependencies so the teams can work independently. An environment uplift perspective to where now new people can come in and work much more quickly and everything's automated, so it's much more consistent on how people are building and how the applications and laptops are being set up. And then they also had a goal of insourcing, right? So they had many teams and they wanted to build their own talent in house and have their teams do it. So part of this effort was to break up these dependencies, get things automated and set up to be built the way the organization wanted to build things going forward, and then bring people from the organization onto the team. So part of that goal was an insourcing goal where we helped take the code, get it in a state where the internal teams, a combination of experienced hires and college grads, were able to pick it up and take it forward. So it's interesting. There's a lot of capabilities we have, and every project seems to be a mix of those different capabilities in order to solve specific client problems. One of the things you're going to learn around studios and our capabilities is we get brought into a lot of different situations. We'll get brought into organizations that have really no technical infrastructure, that need to build a product, and we're the execution partner. We'll get brought into companies that have been writing software for a long time and want to learn how to do it better. And we'll be brought into organizations that have very experienced teams that are building software, and they just need additional capacity in order to build more product and get more things out the door. Daryl, why don't you talk about why someone would bring us in if they already are doing all the right practices and they already are doing a lot of the things we advise?
Sure. Um, I know the situation you're talking about here, and it was pretty sweet because a lot of times when we have the first conversation with maybe some client executives, IT executives, that they'll say, you know, you guys do test-driven development and you pair your developers. That all sounds pretty weird. Like what is that? Doesn't pairing take twice as long? And how could you write the test first when you don't even have the code and all that kind of stuff? So we have all kind of that education process usually as we do our sales calls. In this case, the client had the kickoff meeting with the team. I still remember this. And they said, they had some slides and they said, so we do pairing. Are you okay with that? And we do test-driven development. Are you okay with that? And so you could tell that they had a lot of trouble finding vendors who were up to date on those practices and who really had them kind of in their hearts, like in the way that they did work every day. And so for us, it was a breath of fresh air. And that's really what this client was looking for. So yes, we know the practices. We've had our transformation work, and now we need to slot a team in here that's not going to disrupt everything. That's not going to, fight us on our engineering practices. And so that's where we're able to shine, is because we've got those in our background. Everybody we hire has already got that knowledge, and it's part of how we do things every day. So it was really, how could you add velocity and not tank the rest of our teams because you're just learning, these, software craftsmanship practices. So that's an area where we fit very well.
Yeah, and you're not having to train your contractors. If your team is already doing it, you want to find contractors or partners that already have those skills and know those things. So that's a situation that we get to jump into maybe 20-30% of the time, and it's great. Our people love working in those environments, as well as the environments where they're teaching and guiding. Kevin, another client and project I'm thinking of is similar to that, where we had actually worked with some of the people at the client, previously at other clients, and they were true believers and knew how to build robust, software. But they also had, part of their organization that really had never had the opportunity to build software this way. So, talk about that and how we come into an environment where we may just be providing velocity, but also helping guide people and providing examples along the way.
Yeah, it really is a spectrum. Where the client is or where the dev team is on their journey to software engineering skills. And in both of these cases, different from the digital twin innovation partner where we worked, we were able to work the way we wanted there as well, but they didn't really care, right? They weren't asking for TDD, they weren't asking for pairing, they weren't asking for any of that. They were just measuring the output. Are we able to get the product we want in the time we want it, in the quality we want it? And we were able to show them through XP and Agile practices that we could deliver, versus these clients who they're trying to get to TDD, or they already are at TDD in different engineering practices, where we can slide our developers in who already work in that fashion. So in the one that you're referring to, it was more the leadership were the believers. They had set up the teams for success, but the individual developers on those teams didn't have much experience with the engineering practices that we're talking about. So they wanted people that came in to have those skills and to be able to pair with their own people. Not from a coaching perspective, it's still velocity add, it's still helping them get the product out the door, but coaching by example. So not having to train people, not having to train our people, but just being able to deliver in the practices that give them the quality and velocity that they need.
Yeah, one of the things that we find really important when you're trying to transform is to make sure that you don't just look at it as an expense budget that's around improving the organization, but that you look at your capital budgets and your capitalized expense and say, are those things that I'm spending money on helping me go in the direction I want, or are they slowing me down? So if you put velocity on your team and you're going to have variable expense, why not have it be people who are going in the direction that leadership wants, right? Make sure that you have the skill set on the team. You're already spending that money, you're already building that product. How do we make sure that we're using the right level of engineering talent to make sure that that's helping guide us in the right direction? Another example of that is, for I'd say a medium-sized company, they had 6 engineering teams and a couple support teams, and they had already organized into teams, and the work was flowing to the teams. And a lot of times we're dealing with organizations that have had high levels of turnover, and they have a lot of new talent that may not know their business or their product that well. This organization, they had really long tenured people, and some that had always worked at that organization. So when they were adding capacity to their teams, what they were looking for was, we've got the process stuff and the team formation and so forth, but our teams really haven't had a lot of experience in other environments. So how can we add some player coaches to those teams so that they can help deliver as well as advise along the way. Daryl, why don't you talk about that and how we balance that people uplift by example and that while providing velocity uplift, right? Because in the end, like software has to get out the door, things have to get delivered.
Right. And I thought the way that this customer handled it was very smart. So sometimes when customers are thinking, when the leadership has the thought about let's get these engineering practices into place, they may say, well, we need agile coaching. So we need somebody kind of off to the side who comes in every Tuesday and Thursday or something, and instructs people on how to get this done, and then goes away and everything happens magically. That's not our experience. And so with this customer, they use that term, player coach, and they said, we want fully capable, agile engineering experts on our teams, and we want them to be contributing to the velocity of those teams, but also to have this volume of experience with test driving, with continuous integration, with pairing, that can help our teams see how this is possible in our environment, and kind of can follow that example. And that's the best way for a coach, in quotes, a coach to get credibility with those teams, is to say, I'm doing it right beside you. We're pairing together. We're doing this together. We're learning together. I'm learning about your business. You're learning about agile engineering practices. And we've found that that's very effective. So I think this client went about this in a very smart way. And it's continuing to help to uplift their own people just by having the Leading Agile folks working right beside them and kind of contributing to the velocity that way.
And this is, talking about the spectrum. This particular company is not as far along on the journey. So it's not just the engineering practices. It's having someone on the team that can recognize where they're off track from a process perspective as well, whether it's your backlog management and your estimation, how do you get work to the team, bringing someone into the team that can recognize, well, this is not optimal, this is not ideal, let's make some adjustments. It's more than just engineering practices.
Right. Yeah. So for instance, with that team, it might be that, we do our story points, each point is equal to an hour. And we know that doesn't really help very much in terms of abstracting, estimates and making estimates on less onerous process. So that's something that our engineering player coaches would actually give feedback to those leads to say, hey, what if we try this as a different situation, try it out in this one team, and if it works well, we'll do it across the other teams. And then the other thing we notice is that sometimes we're working with the teams at the engineering level, and we're looking at the cards and saying, do these really connect to some type of business value? And so in those cases, sometimes the customer will come to us and say, do you have like a person with product management experience? Do you have a person with design experience that can do some of this front end work that can make the cards that those teams receive to be better quality and better connected to customers and markets? And so then, Leading Agile, we don't just have software developers quality assurance. We also have product managers. We have UX designers that can handle some of that front end work and then can make better quality cards for those engineering teams.
Awesome. So I think we'll end the storytelling there for now. Well, ultimately, what we have a set of capabilities that we wanted to try to illustrate some examples of how we do them. The capabilities like people uplift and code uplift, where we're doing software assessments and product extraction, or velocity uplift, where we're doing feature development, test automation, environment uplift, where That's kind of where your DevOps and your infrastructure as code fit. And product uplift, or again, like Daryl was just talking about, where you're looking at the backlog, you're looking at the experience, and so forth. So taking all of those capabilities, but then aligning them to a real world problem, right? So we'll talk more about these capabilities and these offers in some other materials, but for now, thanks Daryl and Kevin for joining me, and let us know if you have any questions or feedback.